It's a victory Sunday for the Cleveland Browns, 39-38, and one of the most dramatic endings that you probably could imagine for an NFL game. Cleveland looked like they were going to run away with the game early, and then there were some moments where you just figured, oh, there's no way that the Browns are going to hang on or even come back when they trailed. But they kept scratching and clawing and gave themselves a chance late. And on 4th and goal from the 1-yard line, Kareem Hunt punches it in just barely, getting the nose of the football across the plane. The Browns defense holds up for the final 15 seconds, and Cleveland stuns Indianapolis 39-38. Brendan Gulick and Anthony Moeglin with you from Lucas Oil Stadium with a very happy Cleveland Browns team heading out of the locker room to go get on an airplane and come home with back-to-back wins. Anthony, back-to-back wins. That's something we haven't said a lot the last couple of years. This team hasn't been able to get that done very often. It wasn't pretty for a lot of the game today. This game was nuts, but ultimately it was enough, and they got it done.
I was going to say this is what we call a win streak. This feels good. This is 2 in a row that the Browns come out victorious. I mean, at the end of the day, you have more points than the other team, and that's really all that matters. That game was such a roller coaster, up and down, and we're going to run away with it. The Colts are going to run away with it. I'd rather have the defense out there to score points as opposed to the offense. Like, there was so much that happened throughout the game, but you just commend that team for the fight that they had. How many times, and we said the same thing last week, but how many times does a Browns team get down like that, or get punched back in the mouth and just fold? Or how many times do they have to go on a final drive and it ends poorly? It just was impressive that they just stuck in it, continue to fight, continue to battle. And at the end of when the clock struck triple zeros, they had more points than the Colts, man. And you moved the 4-2, and that's all that really matters.
A game that will be remembered for so many reasons. First and foremost, Myles Garrett played like he was a little kid, and just the unadulterated pure joy that he exuded in a performance that was legendary. A couple of sacks, couple of forced fumbles, an incredible blocked field goal that when I just got out of the postgame press conference and he was asked about, hey, is it difficult to leap over a lineman like that and not touch him? And Myles, who walked into the press conference with his music blaring, all this swag, love and life, he goes, well, not if you're me. I mean, the unbelievable aura of confidence around that guy right now is just, it's magnetic. It's so contagious. And I think you could certainly argue that he single-handedly lifted this team to victory, especially when things started to go south there in the second and third quarters.
Yeah, today was a day that in hopefully 10 and 15 years, when he's walking across the stage in Canton, it's going to be blown up on the big screen. Like on October 22nd of 2023, he did this, and this all in the first half of a game. It was spectacular. Like, you just never seen anything like it. The jumping over somebody from a 4-point stance. I mean, he looked like a Jaguar, like was in his 4-point stance and then leaped over a human being who's not small. Like, offensive linemen aren't very small. And then he full stretched out, almost caught the kick. And then he's just an incredible freak athlete. And having him on display today was special. Beyond the fact they needed every single bit of that to win the football game, it just was really, really, really impressive that, when the team needed him most, he just took over a football game. And it was really cool to watch and witness. You got to witness it firsthand, but just watching on TV was unbelievable.
And I don't laugh or smirk to make light of it. It's one of those days where you'll never forget, hey, I was there when, and in this case, when I saw 95 play like he did today. He is, I know the Browns have a franchise player in their franchise quarterback. To me, Myles Garrett's the face of this team. He is the guy, and this is not disparaging of Deshaun. Myles Garrett is the guy that I think this team rallies around. His personality, his swag, his confidence. When he is out there making plays, they know they are really tough to beat. And even on a day where Gardner Minshew goes out and balls out and throws for 300 yards and puts up 500 yards almost of offense against a Browns team that came in as the number one defensive team in the league and today allowed 5 touchdowns and a field goal.
It was incredible. And, beyond the fact that there's games when you're like, okay, the defense needs to win this game. And that was like today. But then you look back at the defense and you're like, your secondary is kind of struggling. Not that they were struggling. I think Shane Steichen, and we'll probably get into this at some point. He's an elite play caller, and he had that secondary schemed all the way up. It was really impressive from their perspective. But when you look at the defense, you're like, okay, not only does the defense have to win the game, but like the defensive line has to win the game. Like it got boiled down to that level, and Myles Garrett answered the call. It was just like, holy cow, it was unbelievable to watch.
We'll talk real quick on the offensive side. A full team win for sure. Obviously, Deshaun Watson starts the game. That's the major storyline coming in. Some weird stuff. He gets hit. Obviously, he's been dealing with an injured shoulder. He's laying on the ground. He's clearly uncomfortable, okay? Comes off the field, and we find out post-game that Deshaun didn't know that he was actually going to be evaluated for a concussion because somebody had buzzed down from up top and said, hey, his head snapped back, hit the turf, check him for a concussion. He never felt like he was going to, he said he essentially felt fine, but that he felt the pain in his shoulder at that point. Well, Kevin Stefanski said, hey, look, he cleared concussion protocol. It was my decision as the head coach to just say, look, I'm going to protect our franchise quarterback. And that was that. So Deshaun never even picked up a football again to even try to throw a pass and see if he could, put it together again. So there were a lot of moments during the game where as a fan and as a media member, you're left in the dark a little bit because it was just ultimately a coach's decision to take him out of the game. If the Browns would have lost, I think there would have been a whole lot more noise around, well, why was that the case? Because Kevin said post-game, if PJ got hurt with Dorian Thompson-Robinson inactive, he said, I would have because I felt comfortable with it, and I would have had to put Deshaun back in the game. But he said it was PJ Walker's team today, and Walker went out and certainly had some frustrating moments, no doubt, but he also made enough plays to guide this team down the field. And thanks to maybe a couple defensive penalties late, they were able to get it done.
Yeah, you just feel really happy for PJ Walker. I want to start there. Like, I think, let's just listen into him talk the past 2 weeks after the games and, seeing what he's had to kind of go through for this team. I think he's just a really impressive man, an impressive person. And, he isn't the best quarterback, but he's like, gets the job done and he does enough. Like today, outside of the one interception that was pretty much a punt, it actually was a fine play, honestly. Like it was 3rd and 12 and he just chucks it up and you get either a pass interference, a touchdown, or an interception that lands at the 1. Like actually turned out to be pretty smart, but the ball was protected for the most part, got some help on that last drive. So he did his job today. Would love to see him like start to pick up if he's going to have to keep playing, like you got to complete some more passes and be a little bit more efficient, but just impressed by how he stepped in. And, the whole Deshaun thing today was very odd, just kind of how you said, especially Kevin's comments afterwards or Coach Stefanski's comments afterwards saying that, next week he's our starter. You're like, wait a second. How did we get there already? But that's encouraging to hear for sure. But it just makes you wonder, like, what was going on. Maybe he like watched the first 2 drives and thought, oh, Deshaun does not have it today at all. Wasn't seeing it. Like you think of that first pass to the running back was 3 yards behind him, and then the interception, then the next interception. Like, hey, maybe he's not ready, and we'll just use this to like we're going to put him out and get him a week of practice before. But very, very odd.
That's the weirdest part about it because it was like you asked Deshaun post game about the slow start, and he clapped back and said, he's like, that wasn't a slow start. I played 2 series and I got hurt and I was taken out of the game. Like he was dismissive of the question. It was 4 quarters. I think anybody watching was like, okay, well, some misses early. Call it a slow start, call it whatever you want. It wasn't great, right? Yeah. And then on the flip side, when Kevin Stefanski acknowledged postgame, he's like, look, Deshaun's our starter. He's going to play next week, so on and so forth. Well, Deshaun was asked, hey, if the shoulder's bothering you and you didn't go back in the game, are you going to have imaging tomorrow? I don't really know. How do you feel? I don't really know. I guess fine. Are you going to start next week? He goes, I'm not really sure. So like there is some weird disconnect that I think in some ways is really simple, right? I don't blame Kevin Stefanski at all. I think he was being honest. If he didn't think Deshaun was 100% healthy and he got off to a start that wasn't great, call it a slow start, call it something else. He felt like the best thing to do was to give PJ Walker a chance to go out and win the game. That's Kevin Stefanski's job. I have no problem with that at all. But I can understand where there's some level of like, well, is he healthy? Is he not healthy? A couple weeks ago was medically cleared to play, but not functionally ready. Today looked like he could let it rip a little bit. The interception that he threw up the far sideline was on the run, and it was a pretty hardly thrown ball. I don't know. It's just there's an
Super
element of
weird.
this that just feels weird.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right. And even to that interception, they showed it. They cut it back. I'm not sure if you were able to see it, but then they came back from commercial and replayed it. Like it was just it honestly was a great play by the safety. Like Marquise Goodwin kind of got behind the defense and felt like there should be nobody there, and he threw it. And the guy just made like a really good play. The second one where he ended up ruling incomplete, that was super questionable. But it doesn't matter. Like none of that at the end of the day matters. It's going to be the conversation here for the next week for sure, and as it should be. But it just, like you said, there's a disconnect somewhere, and it just, again, for another week, is going to feel super weird and very odd.
All right, I'll tell you one more thing here that is probably not going to get nearly enough attention in this game in particular. But everybody wants to talk about Dustin Hopkins. He had 4 field goals. He had 3 extra points. He was terrific today, including field goals from 54, 54, and then the bomb from 58 that would have been good from at least another 5 or 6 yards. But for as well as he played, I want to credit the special teams as a whole because I thought Bojorquez was terrific today. He hit 1 inside the 20, had a long of 69 yards, and his 5 punts averaged 54.4. It's weird to say that this was a game that really felt field position centric because it was such a high-scoring game, right? The game we all expected. Gardner Minshew and P.J. Walker to put up a game that had, almost 80 points, right? Like, nobody thought that. And yet, field position mattered so much in this game, and I thought Bojorquez in particular and the punt coverage team was great.
He was fantastic, and I love that you shouted that out because he's not going to get talked about enough. And I think as the weeks go on, he's stacked now 2 good games. Like you think back to 49ers last week, that was your quintessential field position battle where you're pinning guys deep, and he was spectacular there. And then today he was awesome. I mean, there were some times there in the second half that flipping the field was huge. And you make a great call out there that him and that whole punt coverage team. I think Pierre Strong almost made the play of the day. And the guy hits the punt return and he fumbles and it just bounces right back to him. That would have been incredible. But yeah, Bojorquez was fantastic today.
Best news of the day, other than the win, Denzel Ward does not have a concussion. So that's great news because the Browns really don't seem like they can afford to lose him in the secondary. Jerome Ford dealing with an ankle injury. He had 11 carries today for 74 yards. Obviously, 69 of those came on 1 touchdown. The Browns didn't run it all that well as a team, with the exception of that really long run at the outset. Walker's final numbers, 15 of 32 for $178 and a pick. Deshaun Watson was 1 of 5 for 5 yards and an interception. Gardner Minshew finished the day 15 of 23 for 305, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But the Browns get it done 39-38 in improbable fashion for sure. Certainly a game that didn't lack any drama. Came down to the final minute, the final drive, a couple of penalties that Browns fans loved and Colts fans hated. But the ultimate answer is that the Browns stack wins for the first time here this season. They're now 4-2 on the campaign, and they are getting ready to travel to Seattle next weekend. For all the latest news and info on the Cleveland Browns, make sure to check out BrownsDigest.com, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Brendan Gulick. Good night from Indianapolis, where Cleveland wins a second straight game, 39-38.